This is the true crime case of Betsy Faria and Russ Faria, a wife fighting cancer and her loving husband who stood by her side. Russ comes home from his weekly game night and discovers his wife Betsy lying still on the floor, surrounded by. He immediately contacted law enforcement, but they were completely fooled by evidence that had been planted, leading them to think Russ was the one who did it. Would you believe that police concluded Russ had his wife 55 times, without getting even a single drop of on himself? All in just 9 minutes, and then called the police himself. In this video, let's take a closer look at the Russ Faria case. Welcome to True Crime with Grandpa. You are awesome and don't believe people who tell you otherwise. In Troy City, Missouri, there lived a couple named Russell and Elizabeth Faria. Everyone called them Russ and Betsy. Both were 42 years old. Russ worked in IT for Enterprise Holdings, and Betsy had a job at State Farm Insurance. Betsy was battling breast cancer and going through chemo treatments. When she was almost better, she and Russ planned a cruise trip in November 2011. But right before their trip, they got devastating news. Her cancer had spread to her liver. Betsy decided to go on that cruise anyway, and even got to swim with dolphins, which was something she'd always wanted to do. Even with all the uncertainty about Betsy's health, they tried to live each day to the fullest and make good memories together. That's how things were going for them. It was Tuesday, December 27th, 2011. Betsy had a chemo appointment, and her mom was driving her to the cancer center. Russ was heading out for his weekly game night with friends. They usually played role-playing games every Tuesday. On his way there, he stopped for gas, smoke, and dog food. Every stop was caught on security cameras, and he had receipts for all the purchases he made. Russ got to his friend's house at 6 p.m. All his friends were supposed to show up, but one couldn't make it. Since they didn't have enough players for their usual role-playing game, they just watched a movie instead. At 9 p.m. Russ and two friends left together. Russ stopped at Arby's and got 2 junior cheddar melts. He ate them while driving the 24.6 miles back home to Troy. Just another regular Tuesday night wrapping up. When Russ got home, he put the dog food down, took off his jacket, and walked into the living room. That's where he found Betsy lying on the floor with everywhere around her. He could see the black handle of their kitchen knife sticking out of her. Russ's first thought was that Betsy did this to herself, since she'd tried something like this before. With her cancer spreading to her liver, it wasn't unreasonable for him to think that way. He called 911 at 9:40 p.m. and told the operator that his wife had taken her own life. The investigation team showed up at the scene and took one look at Betsy's body. They knew right away this wasn't something Betsy had done to herself. Betsy had been a shocking 55 times. There was no way she could have done that to herself. In most cases where the wife is the victim, the husband ends up being the bad guy, and even in this case the investigators started their investigation with a preconceived notion that Russ is the one who did it. Their suspicions seemed confirmed when they found traces of under his slippers. But here's the weird part. There wasn't any on top of the slippers. During questioning, Russ gave them a detailed story of his whole evening. That Tuesday started like any other day. He worked from home until 5 p.m., then called Betsy, who was at her mom's, before heading out to game night. On the way, he stopped for gas, for his smoke, and then for the dog food. All 3 stops were caught on security cameras, and Russ kept all his receipts. His friends backed up his story that he was with them until 9 p.m. Even his cell phone data proved where he was. Russ also mentioned that during game night, he left Betsy a message asking if she was coming home that night. Betsy texted back saying Pamela had offered her a ride home, and she was taking it. Pamela Hupp used to work with Betsy at State Farm Insurance. When Pamela first started at the company, Betsy was the one who trained her. In January 2010, when Pamela found out Betsy was fighting cancer, she reached out and offered to help with her in her treatment journey. The next morning, investigators went to Pamela's house to hear her side of the story. According to Pamela, she dropped Betsy off around 7 p.m. When she was dropping Betsy off, Pamela said she saw a silver car and figured Russ was already home. After that, she went to dinner with her husband. Investigators also talked to Betsy's mother and Bobby, who was an old family friend. Pamela usually drove Betsy to the cancer center for chemo treatments. But on the day this all happened, Betsy had texted Pamela telling her not to bother coming because Bobby was going to take her to the cancer center instead. Pamela texted back bummer. But then she showed up anyway to pick her up, and Betsy was really surprised to see her. So all three of them, Betsy, Bobby, and Pamela, ended up going to the cancer center together that day. After the chemo session, Pamela offered Betsy a ride to her home in Troy, and Betsy agreed to that. Even Russ mentioned this in his statement. So far, the investigators questioned Russ, Pamela, Betsy's mother, and Bobby. As investigators kept digging, they found something huge that could be directly connected to the case. On December 23rd, just 4 days before the incident happened, there was a major change to Betsy's $150,000 life insurance policy. Russ had been the beneficiary for years. But just 4 days before she passed away, Betsy changed the beneficiary to Pamela Hupp. When the investigators asked Pamela about this change, she claimed Betsy was worried about her daughters from her previous marriage. She said Betsy wanted to make sure the girls would get some financial help after she passed away, and she was concerned that if Russ got the money, the daughters might not see any of it. Pamela said Betsy wanted her to be the beneficiary, so she could make sure the girls got their fair share. The investigator bought this explanation completely and actually told the insurance company to go ahead and pay out the claim since they had no problems with it. Not only that, but when they asked Pamela why she went to pick up Betsy when Betsy had texted her not to bother, Pamela said she never got that message. But when they checked the phone records, Pamela had actually replied bummer to Betsy's text. Meanwhile, Russ got charged with the crime and was sitting in jail waiting for his trial. Joel Schwartz took on Russ's case and went through all the police reports. He felt like there were tons of things that just didn't add up. Russ left game night and had to drive 24.6 miles home, with a stop at Arby's for 2 junior cheddar melts. Even if Russ had somehow made it home in just 23 minutes, he would have had only 9 minutes to his wife 55 times and clean up before calling 911. This timeline was physically impossible for any human being. Forensic experts couldn't find even a tiny bit of Betsy's on his body, under his fingernails, or on his clothes. Most importantly, Russ was still wearing the same orange Rhode Island t-shirt and Sonoma jeans that security cameras had caught him in all evening long. Is it even remotely possible to stab someone 55 times and not get splattered all over yourself? And there was something really off about those slippers that investigators thought proved Russ was guilty. There were no signs of on top of the slippers. Is it possible to stab someone 55 times without getting sprayed on your slippers? The underneath the slipper clearly suggested that someone was trying to frame Russ. Joel Schwartz also studied Pamela's statements, which kept changing over time. At one point, Pamela even mentioned that her mom has dementia and is worth $500,000 in insurance money. If she was really after insurance money, why would she pick a harder target when she could have planned something on her mom? This was really strange because it seemed like Pamela had actually thought through her options and decided Betsy as her target. The investigators couldn't see all this physical evidence in support of Russ as they were blinded by their programmed mindset. They wanted to believe Russ did it, and that was that. Here's the crazy part. State Farm Insurance processed the beneficiary change request the morning after Betsy passed away, and Pamela ended up getting $150,000 within just a few weeks. It was like everything was working against Russ, and everyone blindly trusted the person who had a $150,000 motive. On January 4th, 2012, just 1 week after Betsy's funeral, Russ Faria got arrested and charged with the crime. The trial started in November 2013, with Judge Mennemeyer presiding over the case. Right from the start, Judge Mennemeyer shut down any possibility that Pamela could be involved in this crime. She said there was no direct connection and refused to let the defense present Pamela as a possible suspect. Schwartz tried to convince that she was the last person to see Betsy, she inherited the insurance money, and that she also changed her statements from time to time. But the judge also behaved with a fixated mindset, just like the investigators. Schwartz presented solid evidence to the court. Testimony from friends confirming Russ was with them for the game night, security footage and receipts showing him at different places throughout the evening, and cell phone data proving he was more than 20 miles away from the scene when the crime happened. He also argued that the blood on the slipper had been planted. Prosecutors claimed that Russ and his friends had cooked up this fake alibi together. But Pamela had said she saw Russ's car when she dropped Betsy off at home. The stained slipper, which was supposedly planted evidence, still worked against Russ. On November 21, 2013, the jury found innocent man Russ Faria guilty of all charges and sentenced him to life in prison with no chance of parole. This was such a huge failure on the judge's part to rule out Pamela as an alternative suspect in the case. In my research, I also discovered that Judge Mennemeyer got suspended for 6 months for some kind of misconduct. But Joel Schwartz wasn't giving up. He immediately filed an appeal, arguing that crucial evidence had been kept from the jury. In February 2015, the Missouri Court of Appeals agreed and ordered a new trial. The retrial happened in November 2015. This time, Judge Stephen Omer allowed them to present evidence about Pamela Hupp as a possible suspect. The jury heard all of Schwartz's arguments. But Pamela Hupp didn't even bother showing up to testify. On November 5, 2015, Judge Omer found Russ Faria not guilty. After spending nearly 4 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, Russ Faria was finally free. Once Russ got out of jail, all eyes turned to Pamela, and it was just a matter of time before they could prove she was involved in the crime. In August 2016, Pamela called police saying she had shot a man 5 times in her home, claiming he was Russ's hitman who came to take her out. When they investigated further, they found out that Pamela had actually lured this guy named Lewis to her house by telling him about some TV show and offering him $1,000. After ending his life, she planted a note on his body saying he'd gotten money from Russ and came there to harm her. This time, Pamela's planted evidence was sloppy. She was getting desperate to clear herself from Betsy's case. Finally, Pamela Hupp got arrested and is facing trial. Pamela trial is scheduled for August 2026, and hopefully we'll be able to remove cancerous people like her from society. The woman who had destroyed so many lives was finally behind bars where she belonged. In 2020, Lincoln County Sheriff's Department paid Russ over $2 million in a settlement for his wrongful conviction. But can money really give him back those 4 years of his life? The $150,000 life insurance policy was the key to her whole plan, money she was planning to keep for herself. When Pamela found out Betsy had cancer, she immediately reached out to her. She earned Betsy's trust by helping her during this tough time and managed to trick her into changing the beneficiary to her own name. She had set up Russ so perfectly that she would be completely off law enforcement's radar. Police thought they had solved the case before they even started investigating. They completely messed up reading the evidence and ended up having to pay Russ $2 million for wrongfully convicting him and stealing 4 years of his life. The judge dismissed the possibility of other suspects even though there was evidence pointing straight at Pamela. Schwartz was the only hope in this whole mess. He couldn't just stand by and watch justice get trampled on. Russ spent 4 years of his life locked up with actual criminals for something he never did. All he had wanted was to spend Betsy's final days with her. People like Pamela are like cancer to our society. Betsy only had a little time left, and the couple was trying to make the most of it. But Pamela destroyed their dreams by stabbing her 55 times. Betsy might have beaten the cancer in her body, but she was eaten up by cancerous people like Pamela in the society. So what do you think about this case? If you were the victim, how would you try to get away? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed my storytelling, please give your grandpa a like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next true crime case.